It is about understanding your customer, understanding the channels that relate to the customer at the end of the day. And not every single channel is going to work the same way.
It's time for CX education. Welcome to the podcast for enterprise CX professionals, the people who want to connect with customers on their own terms, before, during, and after a purchase is made. In each episode, you'll learn how to create experiences your customers love. Ready? Here we go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CX Education. I'm Michael Ahearn, VP of Customer Development Strategy for Cinch Marketing. And as you might guess, this episode is brought to you by Cinch, a provider of platforms, technologies, and services that help businesses create mobile experiences customers love by connecting them with the audience on their own terms, when, where, and how they want. At Cinch Marketing, myself, I lead the team that works directly with major brands, enterprises, and marketing agencies to help formulate innovative mobile marketing programs and initiatives in both operational and marketing messaging. Today, I am very lucky to have our guest, Anthony McLoughlin, who's just taken a new position as VP Ecommerce and Growth Marketing at Rothy, a great fashion brand for classic shoes and accessory styles that blend really amazing comfort, innovation, and sustainable design. And I can attest to the wonderfulness of those shoes. I love my Rothy's Chelsea boots. Anthony's been in corporate executive leadership and marketing for brands like Tailored Brands, which you may know as Men's Warehouse, Joseph Banks, and other great names. BB, Aeropostale, Gap, and others. And it's been a speaker at events like AdTech, OMMA, and other well-known marketing events. Anthony, thanks for joining me so early in the morning.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
No problem. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just start with our chat today. To give your audience a bit of background, can you tell us something about your past experience with retail customer experience in digital marketing, and maybe some of your philosophies? I'll call them the 4 pillars of Anthony or the 3 pillars of Anthony. Anything that are learnings in terms of customer experience, having waded through the waters in retail marketing?
Yeah. So I don't know if I have 3 or 4 pillars. I think I have just some general principles that have served me, but it's taken me some time to learn them. It wasn't like they were just handed to me when I first started doing marketing. I kind of figured them out over time through trial and error. But the first and most important thing, I think it's overlooked constantly by everyone, is to understand what the addressable market is. Like, what are we trying to do in the market? Like, who's our competition? And above all things, who's our customer? As we get to know our competition and our customer, obviously the customer breaks down into various segments because no one customer is alike, from demographics of age, but also typically based on categories, depending on where you're working. I've worked at brands that had, 30,000 SKUs, and there was so much opportunity to sort different types of products and cross-sell to some brands that only had like 10 SKUs. And it was like very, very specific. So it's really about, first and foremost, understanding the market, understanding the customer, and then understanding, if we were having this conversation at the end of the holiday, it's January, and hopefully we're all feeling relieved that it's kind of behind us, so to speak. What are the outcomes that we're trying to accomplish, and how does customer experience actually help us achieve those outcomes? So doing all the heavy lifting up front in order to kind of do the best work in market and see the best possible outcomes is always the most important. So the way I kind of think of that is, who's the market? Who's our customer? And have we scored the customer? Like, typically the scoring of the customer in the database happens in batches. At least historically it happened in batches. Like, you have a budget and you do it like, once a quarter. I think the best way to do it is to do it point of entry. So you understand who your segments are. And as those segments start to build over time, you've done a fair amount of testing. And then as you go into market, you understand that, hey, what's the right message for the right customer at the right time? I know it sounds like such a cliched statement, even as I say it, but it's so true. To this day, there's just in the world that we operate in, there's so much messaging, so much media. It's just so important to get it really specific, to be really focused on the value proposition of that particular customer in that particular moment, knowing that next week you're going to probably speaking to the same customer in a different moment. It all has to be relevant and make sense. And so that's generally how, and those are my pillars, I would say. And then I guess lastly, which seems fairly pedantic, but really actually I've seen it work tremendously, is like memorialize everything. When I first started in marketing, we used to build marketing plans. And then as the world got super complicated, that kind of fell to the side, and we've been relying on platforms to do the heavy lifting for us. So if you just take a step back and actually force yourself to do an integrated marketing plan, you'll be surprised this articulating the strategy and tactics in group and then assigning like outcomes by group really helps for a better outcome in the business I've seen overall. It definitely makes it easier to hindsight. Also, as the season ends, when hopefully everyone's happy about it.
That's great. Can you think of now, here's where I get to put you on the spot. Are there any examples you would have of how you would change customer experience by knowing your customer? It sounds like you're really talking first on the concept, and that this is really something that I find really important, understanding the difference between segmentation and personalization, right? And so when you say you know your audience, you can know your audience as 100,000 people. You can know your audience as a technographic. You can know your audience as a demographic. You can know them as a segment, or you can know them as Anthony McLoughlin and Michael Ahearn, right? And so there's a degree of telescoping on a customer. Do you have any examples how you change the customer experience as you know your audience?
I've been doing it different ways over time, so it's hard to kind of provide like a singular example. But I'll start off with like a general kind of premise. You're correct, right? There's a big distinction between segmentation and personalization. And I think that what gets lost is that marketers think that doing personalization is actually doing segmentation, and it's really not. And so segmentation, if you've done the heavy lifting I talked about previously and you score them at the database, you have these cohorts they're scored on RFM and possibly A, so recency, frequency, monitor, and affinity. And so then you're using these attributes then to build the audiences and create specific messaging in group about a need for the business. And then you layer on personalization that I know if we're both in the group and I know that your name is Michael, my name's Anthony, I can go and start with just understanding the simple information like that and populating that in all of my subject lines that are like really, really important, or in text messaging if that's possible as well. So that's one form of personalization that I think has really served because it breaks through the clutter. Other forms of personalization actually works contrary to that in some awkward way. It's like a mass personalization that happens on the e-commerce experiences that I've managed that are powered by AI. And the AI it's anonymous, right? It's behavioral personalization. Like, hey, you've seen this, you've abandoned this cart, but it doesn't know you belong to my high frequency cohort. And so the connection of those two things is typically where things fall apart. And marketers typically think that they're doing one or both when they're doing personalization, when they're not. And so as I think back in time, like where this has worked and hasn't worked, is there's a typical belief when you score a database that the high value customers are the ones that have to spend all the money. And what I've seen most recently at a couple of retailers is that we call those the VIP segments, but they're actually the lowest segments we have because they spent all their wallet share. They're not going to spend for a very long time. And in fact, it's the segments right below them that are actually the most primed to shop next. And so not having a predictability score on your database really has hurt some brands that I've worked with in choosing the right segments to message certain types of value propositions, if that makes any sense.
That's amazing. I just learned something today. Thanks. That's a really good insight. I'm going to steal that with no shame. What's interesting is that segment right below the tip of the pyramid, right, of your customer, of customer value. What kind of experiences if you're really focusing at them, what are the things that really drive conversion or drive your KPIs of that sort of golden segment in the pyramid? Is it
all depends.
Is it personal? What's that? Go ahead.
It depends. It depends on where you are. And if it's specific around holiday, right? If it's specific around holiday and you scored the database, you have that segment that's like segments 2 and 3 that are most likely to spend. It's really about doing the frequency in-house. It's like, when are they most likely to spend? And then what are they most likely to buy? Or what are the adjacent products that they're most likely to buy to solve, these essential like two needs in holiday, right? So as you think of the consumer, there are two macro needs that I'm always trying to answer as I kind of approach my marketing. Is this a need or a want moment? And is it a both moment, right? So most people are getting targeted by the marketer in a need moment. Like, you need to have that, and we're going to give you a reason to do this, right? Like, here's a discount. But the recipient, the customer, has their for specific needs, and the discount may not be actually what's going to drive their behavior. They just may need to see the product that they need to buy for someone. In my experience, and I obviously wouldn't repeat this to my current employer, but nobody needs a new pair of shoes, right? So they want the new pair of shoes. So that they're looking for a product in a gifting situation, a holiday, and then they're self-gifting at the same time. So understanding the relationship between self-gifting, that I want it versus the need. I need to find something for somebody. And as you make that, as you kind of introduce those products in your experiences vis-a-vis the website, because you've actually powering these audiences into landing page destinations or through all of your direct lists, particularly email and SMS come to mind, but also direct mail, snail mail still works. This takes a lot longer. That you have to understand these two needs. Is this a gifting moment for them? Or are we trying to solve a gifting moment as they start to give gifts to others during this holiday season? So that's where it kind of all comes to play.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're talking about here is really the intersection of product awareness and personalization, right? Is really sort of the sweet spot there for holiday. So let's go ahead and switch to holiday, and not just holiday as Black Friday. And when we say holiday, that could include Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, the post-holiday. But also I'd like to sort of open this, since we are so close to the holidays too, and make what we're talking about today valuable year round in a way, is those seasonal events, right? That are important, that you've changed from my sort of everyday sort of year-long marketing or my marketing plan, where you are definitely switching your mind to something external to your brand that you have to acknowledge and actually integrate, right, into what you're doing. And that integration of personalization and product awareness, especially for the winter holidays, seems really important. Are there any sort of channel preferences, or this idea of the recommendation engine that is recommending product and you're not just becoming a coupon factory? How do you bring those together? What are some tactics or ways in customer experiences you could bring personalization and product awareness together in the same?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a hard question to answer without seeming like I'm continuing to hit on the same kind of themes, but it's about essentially having this plan and this cadence in the season where that you're, at least in the world that I operated in retail, which is very product focused. This probably wouldn't work so well in a service-based model, but in a product-based model, I'm answerable to merchants who bought products, right? Hey, Anthony, we have 10,000 shoes to sell. We have 10,000 shirts to sell, but they want to sell it at different price points at 2 months out from where we are at, 2 weeks out. And so it's creating this strategy of messaging and personalization that basically that waterfalls the whole season. So we're trying to get the most high value customers to buy early with messaging. Particularly, let's say, Michael, if I was targeting you, 13 months from now, because I know that you're ready for a new pair of shoes, or you're fall into a gifting cohort that we've created, I'm going to be messaging you 2 months in the season when the first season begins. Let's just call it in October, that your particular shoe is, limited run. And it's showing you the personalized shoes that you bought in the past and adjacent types of shoes that we think you'd actually sell. As that model went down, I know that you may have, and you haven't bought with us yet. I'm going to make the assumption I still have an opportunity and share of your wallet. And that messaging has become highly more acute. Maybe I switch channels and email hasn't been working. Maybe I'm moving you now to the SMS channel. And I'm talking about, we have, 30 shoes of that particular pair in your size. And I'm using scarcity to get you to kind of act on our hope that you buy. And then as we kind of get closer to it, I then introduce a promotion and the scarcity model together. I think what brands are doing potentially incorrectly, it really depends on the specific mechanics of the brand's P&L, is that they're trying to take market share all the time. And so they're always on promotion and they're always messaging their highest value to all the segments. And by the time the season gets through, you kind of drown them with the same repetitive message in the same repetitive way. And it totally loses effect. At least it loses effect in the typical KPIs that you're looking for as a marketer. So, all that kind of, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's this.
Yeah, it does.
Breaking it up early, cross-messaging channel, understanding what messages, particularly around a particular product we want you to buy, then the scarcity model, then the value model, and then marrying scarcity and value together at the end.
That's cool. And that sort of brings to mind that there's so many different ways in format, in channel is one lever that you have to really, change the customer experience. You've got the content itself, have what the message can and can't do in terms of personalization. So you have a whole spectrum from just changing a message, let's say in an SMS that has someone's first name is a factor degree better than just a random SMS, right? But then you could put the dynamic content into the SMS, right? So then you start to introduce you're doing actually product recommendation, or you're actually starting to focus on what would be relevant to them. And then you can start in experiences that are even more high value. Let's say now you're starting, let's say you personalize a video, right? And what wouldn't it be magical if you
Right.
get them some of the video where that video talked about something they didn't buy, or something that you know that they've been Googling on the web, right? And you have that data and you can start showing the images of that. Or maybe if it's a fashion item, you can see attractive people running around in that item they've been sort of mousing
Yeah.
around. Then all the way through, it's like maybe you start a conversation with a customer about that. And so there seems to be a spectrum of customer experience. What has been your experience with, let's say, the most basic to the things that are aspirational and in between and the Goldilocks? What are the things that are of most interest to you in terms of, these kind of techniques and possible tactics in communicating to a customer?
It's changed over time. Right now, there's these macro trends that are influencing the way that I'm kind of approaching this type of marketing. So, and I'm going to break it up here a little bit outside of just the typical CRM. So if you think of it in two ways, and there are more ways to think of it than this, but just at the macro level, you have your growth marketing, right? Which is all the marketing you have in awareness and paid media, particularly dominated in today's world by Facebook, Instagram, and Google. And then you have your CRM marketing, right? Where I think of it as a traditional list, that you're syndicating lists into those other channels. What's happening now is there's such a refined need to get your CRM messaging broken down by segment, message, value proposition, and to have this lifecycle flow, this connectivity between, I know that you're in my email and my SMS, and I know when you're on my website, and I have different messages at different times to connect the points. And I think that whole lifecycle marketing and how it's done has been magnified now because of something that's happening in paid media. And so in paid media, the benefits for non-human decision-making, right, Michael? So algorithm-based decision-making in paid media allows these algorithms to make decisions in the aggregate for the best outcomes. But in doing that, what you've done is you've given them total license to manage your business as you see fit. But if you're a brand that has various categories, you can't tell the algorithm, focus on shoes and not shirts because they got more shirts. And so what happens is that the algorithm sees where the propensity to buy is, and they just drive wherever that unit is. And so then my merchants say, hey, Anthony, you're spending all this money, but you're only driving shoes. I need you to drive shirts. But we can't, because we're going to compromise the algorithm and sell shirts, but much less. And in the aggregate, we have a less efficient paid program. And so that all the focus then turns onto CRM in your world, right, Michael? Which I need to make sure that those shirts sell because I can't sell them on Facebook at the volume I need to. And that's where everything we've talked about kind of plays into the fore. Understanding the audiences, where we are in the maturity cycle, and then building these life cycle messages that really kind of drive value proposition. In some cases, it may be the value proposition, maybe at the product level. So we know, let's say that one type of shirt is a slim fit and another type of shirt is more broad. And we know that you happen to be a demographic not unlike me, who's probably not going to fit in a slim shirt anymore. And so now I have now migrated myself off of that.
Too much.
So then, I've known that historically you may have bought a slim fit shirt, but I can see that you bought slim fit 9, slim fit 10, slim fit 12. Okay, he's going to graduate out of this as he ages. And now he's in a different demographic. And so I'm going to start marketing more broader shirts. And so all that messaging is really about knowing the customer and it all through these channels. Now more than ever, that the other channels that you're managing can't do that for you.
It's very interesting. So it was interesting when we were talking before we went on to record this, we were talking about holiday specific experiences. And we had a little chuckle between each other about, I said,
Yes.
okay, I'm going to give an example. And I was very proud of the example. And it's one of the highlights of my marketing past. And he said, oh, that's funny, Michael, that didn't work for me at all. And I just sort of said, wow, that's really interesting. I think the audience would find that very, very illuminating. So let's explore that a little bit, because I think it's really good, valuable to really be honest in the evaluation of marketing ideas. Not everything works. Sometimes it works for one person, doesn't work for another person. And again, it's really important. And it's a mantra for me is it depends. Really, unfortunately, is the answer to a lot of marketing questions. There's no silver bullet. And something that can be wildly successful one person may not work as well for someone else. And it's not the channel. It is really the relevance to the customer in the customer experience. It's the relevance, and you have to get all the levers just right for everything to really sort of to come together. It's like a symphony. All the instruments have to be playing together. If there's one tuba in the back that's blowing flat, the whole symphony sounds lousy, right? So
I've always
So
used that, or
I'll
I love
explore
that
this. So
analogy.
we've seen it in market many times. It's the concept of a unique campaign in the holiday seasons where you will increase the frequency of messaging in a paradigm of, hey, we're going to, and you promote it this way, we're going to send you messages every day for a certain period of time. And we call it the 12 days of Christmas. It's that whole idea of the Christmas calendar, right? And as children, remember opening up the little doors in that paper thing, and they have chocolates behind it. You're wondering
The
what
advent
chocolate.
calendar. Yes, the advent
Yeah,
calendar.
advent calendar. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I remember my son had one for Star Wars Legos, and it was every year like religion. We had to get the Star Wars Lego advent calendar. But that was the paradigm of the marketing strategy and tactic, right? And so we deployed that for a fashion brand, and it was wildly successful. Now the keys to it being very successful, one, they did an amazing job of promoting the program and the campaign, right? They had both an existing opt-in base, and this was for the mobile messaging channel. They had an existing opt-in database that they were going to touch with this. So it would be an additional program to their regular messaging. But also one of the KPIs was we want to use this to drive new members and new acquisition into the program. So after the holidays, we have this new cohort of people that are new opt-ins that for, forevermore, they are now new people I can actually talk to. And of course, driving sales was of course important as well. So it had a multifaceted objective. It was really well promoted. So they did a cross-channel promotion that was really well executed. So it was in Facebook, it was in-store big posters. They did email outreach. You could see it on the web page. You could see it in the app. Everywhere that you knew to do it, and it was high value. So it was the 12 days of Christmas. They had every day you get a message, you have a chance to win a big prize, like an iPad, whatever it might be. Every day you had a chance to win that. The interface was very well executed, where you got the SMS, you clicked on a link, it opened up a browser page, and a present opened up to you interactive, right? So you're opening presents every day. So it was really fun, really well executed. And they have the brass ring prize at the end, where in the end we'll give $10,000 spending spree to the lucky winner at the end of the thing. And it worked wildly well. I think they double or almost tripled the size of their database with the program, and they had a 65% click-through rate. So for me, that was like a great success. But you said you tried
Sounds
something
phenomenal.
similar and it didn't work. And so I'd love to know what you did and why it didn't work for you. And we can compare notes. And I think it might be really instructional for our listeners to see the dichotomy of something that seems almost identical, but very different result.
Yeah, no, that's totally right. And you're right about it depends, right? So I guess it kind of goes all the way back to the beginning. It's like knowing your market, knowing your audience. And at the time I thought we did. And the previous year we created this kind of advent experience too with a sweepstakes model. And we did an email, and it was a huge success, right? We had lots of crazy opt-ins for email. We found that there was a lot of engagement, and that we ultimately drove more sales, but just created a lot more buzz in the market through this. At the time, I don't think we had like a really robust external campaign outside of email, like the one that you described. But in the event, we said, we're definitely going to do this for next year, and we'll make it bigger because we're greedy marketers, of course, right? We want to drive the most. And so rather than 12 days, let's do it for 20 days. And let's change it from email to our new SMS program. And it all sounded absolutely wonderful. And like it was just going to be the best thing that we could come and think of. And of course, we decided not to do an email and move to SMS, and it was a complete flop. And the bigger flop, the more we wanted to try it and do more of it, because it was obvious that we weren't doing it right. But it was basically a strategic error in not knowing our audience. In this particular brand I was working for, there were two people that I was trying to solve for, but I didn't realize that in the moment. One is the end user, the person who's actually buying the product, these teens, but they didn't have credit cards, right? And so it was the mom who was making the purchase for them, and she was on email. But it was the teen who had just got the phone who was on SMS. And so we were just messaging people constantly who didn't have any way of shopping with us because they didn't have a credit card. And we couldn't translate that to like, hey, get your mom to buy this for you, because it lost total kind of like value to the teenager at the time. And so we found that it really didn't drive any value. We saw low engagements. No one participated in sweepstakes that we thought was really going to do. It didn't have any payoff. And we didn't factor at the time. It's like, wow, we had really solved this when we were in email the year before in a much more abbreviated format, because the mom was in email and she was participating in it, and the kid was like on her shoulder watching her do it. Versus when we were texting her, she was away from her parents. She didn't want anything to do with her parents when she was on her phone, and she didn't have a credit card, and she didn't understand like, well, what am I getting from this? And so it was a complete flop. And the end result is like, okay, know your customer, understand that it's not going to work, verbatim every single time. And I just get more thought up front, and I don't think we kind of did that again. I can't recall, but likely we did not do this Advent approach. But it is about understanding your customer, understanding the channels that relate to the customer at the end of the day. And not every single channel is going to work the same way.
Yeah, and I think it's the channel plus customer, and it's one of the things that I've seen is you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's not the channel, actually, it's what you're doing with the channel is really the important thing. Is that the channels are tools, right? And they're not silver bullets in and of themselves. So throwing technology at the marketing, you still have to do marketing 101, right? Is that the technologies are not silver bullets. You can do something well in the channel, you can do something poorly in the channel. And it goes way beyond the technology. It's really, as you said, knowing the customer. What are some of the big do's, good ideas for a holiday? What do you think the things that work? Is it gifting? Is it product awareness? I mean, is it integrating philanthropy in marketing for the holiday season?
It really depends on your brand, right, Michael? Yeah. It could be all those things and it could be none of those things. I think that at the heart of everything you want to try and do, at least in the product model, I can't speak to the service model, but if you're in the product model, it's like, what's your value proposition and who's your core audience? And hey, this holiday, what is different this holiday in that value proposition? Right? Do we have new products to sell that we didn't have the season before? Is it different pricing? Or there's scarcity? Like, hey, we only have a few of them, so we're going to actually market them early. And I think that it's really understanding that value proposition first and foremost, and then creating these covetable moments. I think that's one of the things that most marketers forget is that trying to take market share, and it isn't typically a utility moment, not in the holidays, right? You're like, gosh, you've got license to spend. It's like, I want that, right? I want this new jacket I've been coveting forever. And so it's making sure that your content and your creative actually speaks to the audience, creating these beautiful, covetable moments where the content and the creative do the heavy lifting of the aspiration, and the marketer does the heavy lifting of the targeting and the messaging and all the upfront work. And when that comes together in the perfect way, right product, right message, right time, and particularly in the right channel, intimate channels like mobile, you have to be very careful with. But I think that's the winning solution, right? Don't forget that you have to get them to fall in love with this kind of product that can seem, which at the end of the day is just another pair of shoes, right? So how you make this pair of shoes like the most beautiful, aspirational pair of shoes, and content really does the heavy lifting on that.
So how do you make people fall in love with an object? I mean, that's what we all do for a living, right? Hopefully that's what gets me up in the morning, is trying to make people fall in love and to be able to communicate value to people of an object, and then to compel a behavior in that. And would you say the first thing you want to do as an experience is well, let me ask this, it's head and heart, right? What is more effective, reaching for the heart of the customer or reaching for the head of the customer? And it may not be an either or, but it'd be an interesting subject, and especially around holiday where there's a lot of heart, right? Because there are a lot of emotional keys in the holiday season that you might be able to leverage that don't exist in other times of the year. What are some of the levers experientially that you would say are effective around, let's just talk about holiday season to start.
Yeah, I actually think you hit it on the nail, but everything starts with the heart. All the decision-making is really like, I want that. Now I'm trying to convince myself I should do it, that I need it, right? When I clearly don't need it, but I just want it. And so
it's irrational. So at its heart, it's irrational, right?
And so the way that look, we live, sadly, because I'm someone who still likes to read books, we live in a visual society where all decision-making is done in a browse moment, and you're not really spending a lot of time. And so the way you win in the heart is creating these dynamic visual experiences. And I actually really recommend using video and interactive engagement because it really differentiates the moment, and creating these covetable videos, these covetable interactives, creative, where you're really showing the product in its ultimate use case. So I'm not telling you that, hey, this product has or this shirt has, extra padding, or this button's not going to fall off. No one cares about that in that moment. They're like, tell me why this is going to actually make me feel better about myself once I have it on. It's that aspirational quality. And so that's where all the heavy lifting has to happen. Because if you don't win that moment, nothing else follows. But if you win that moment, then it's just a psychology game, right? Well, does it really worth the $100? Well, it's the holiday season. They're giving me a 10% discount. I've got to buy a gift for my brother. He'd love this shirt. I'll buy two and get a bigger discount. It's all about playing on that model, but it's really all the heavy lifting happens up front. Because if you don't do that covetable moment, you're just you're a commodity good and you're not even the consideration set. So just trying to stay in the consideration set for the wallet share long enough and in the right way. And it all depends on the brand and the products. There's no like golden way to do it. But I think most marketers, when they work really closely, particularly in a pod environment with a creative and an analyst, and you create this messaging stream that's leveraging these types of moments creatively, I've seen it work the best ultimately.
Yeah. And I'm going to be as bold as say that, and again, this is in my humble opinion and experience, I think it's crazy to be marketing without images in 2022, especially in retail. I think there's a dichotomy of using messaging that is, if something is operational, informational, sure, you can use words only, and it totally makes sense. And in fact, it's probably better because it's going to be cheaper. It's probably a higher volume. And if what you're saying doesn't require me to show you something, but so much marketing is still telling and not showing. And I think for retail, you will never, nobody is as great a writer. Flaubert was not as good a writer in marketing to be able to sell me a shirt, right, with words alone. Okay.
Wow, use Flaubert. I mean, I don't know if I can top that.
I'm just saying, the remembrance of time past. I mean, the greatest writers of man could not sell me a shirt with words only, right? And I think especially today, given the technologies and the way that that people, I hate using the word consumers, we're talking people here, right? Human beings. The way that human beings communicate today, the most penetrative and the monsters of the way that people interact and communicate are all visual. It's TikTok, it's Instagram. These channels are dominant for a reason. They're not dominant because they have lots of words in it. And I would be, Facebook is meeting challenges because there's too many words in a Facebook post, right? It's a wordy channel now. Now, again, it's not dead. And there's a mix of everything, email, direct, everything. And I think you made the great point. Nothing dies. But I think in my view, and tell me if you think this is true, is that the consumer, especially the consumer under 35, are visual creatures. They need to see.
Yeah, I think that everyone is that age. It's one of the things that transcends age, that we make our decisions at a visual level, truly. And the reasons why marketers haven't adopted, it's really a cost basis. And so this is an ongoing discussion I'm having with everybody on my team. It's so much cheaper to send text. And so the near-term result of sending the text is so much more defensible. And the long-term effects of not sending content or just sending text are not discussed. And so I think that you really have to break it out. Like, what is the overarching kind of feeling you want to leave your consumers with, whether they shop you or not, right? So if you think of it outside of a transactional moment, it's like, I want to make sure that you covet our products, that you keep us in the consideration set for your future considerations. And we're always top of mind now when there's 1,000 brands for you to consider. So we are competing against such a mass market. If I boil everything down to a transaction, then I may have you right now, but I will not get you next year. I will not get you again. And so it really has to be about broadening the customer experience to understand that not everything in season will be decided by the transaction, and that you're trying to also build the business of the future and to stay true to your value proposition on the product. And hopefully that hails perfectly with your brand proposition if it's done well, and to lean heavily into content, and then to make sure that the content diversified. You just don't have one type of video. You need several types of video broken out by different cohorts, and then powered through personalized messaging. SMS, email are the most direct, but direct mail, actually, this still works. And all that should be family to the life cycle moment and evaluated over a longer period of time than the holiday season you're in.
Are there any touch points you see as sort of the mission critical touch points where you might spend more money on a message where you say, okay, we have an arsenal of customer experiences, right? Some of them could be as effective but basic as just 160 characters, right? And they can be personalized, so they can be actually higher value. And then you have other things that are higher value that have higher sophistication, maybe have a higher price even, who knows? But you would say certain touch points deserve the Rolls Royce touch, and other ones are great with the standard touch. Do you have any, and if you can even bring it into holiday season, touch points you think are Rolls Royce touches that are mission critical touches in the holiday season?
I'll just use one example specifically. MMS for mobile is critical. And I think it gets overlooked because it's much more expensive at the send level than just the regular text. But I think it's folly to let that be the decider, because it's the most intimate experience you can have with the marketer truly. because the phone is everywhere. They're more attached to that phone than anything else, likely. And when you interrupt them on that phone, the value proposition has to be so much higher than any sort of other interruption that you engage them with. And so to send them just text messages at any time, but particularly during the most peak time, and to interrupt them when you could easily send MMS and really create this beautiful experience, even if it doesn't translate into sale right then, you've captured them. They're going to have higher open rates and they're going to be more engaged with you on the go forward. That's the biggest mistake to me on that particular channel. And I wish even myself that I had more forethought in the past. I've done more of it, but I plan to.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that, I mean, 100% you want to rely on the math, right? So you're going to do the calculation of higher conversion rate versus higher cost of message, right? This is math you're going to do, and you're going to figure out that sweet spot 100%. One of the intangibles I always I'm trying to come to grips with is I believe, I don't know if I can prove it in data, and maybe someone smarter than me will be able to figure this out in attribution or effect, but there has to be a knock-on effect of someone consuming a video where that might not have triggered a purchase at that exact moment. And it's not last click attribution. And it's not as empirical with that, but there is a residual effect of having been exposed and consumed an image or watched a video that's very hard to measure. And I'm a true believer that there's a value in that experience, especially holiday based, where someone could have seen a video about something, you may not have a pixel drive back to you say that particular message drove that purchase, but it actually did. And it's invisible to you. And the faith in the experience of a higher order experience around the product is to have the faith that, wow, watching a video's gotta work. It's gotta be doing something better than 160 characters, right?
You can measure this. It's a much larger time horizon. So basically you just have to pull out all those people that have actually delivered the MMS versus the holdout group of non-seeing it over time, measure their frequency and lifetime value to see whether or not, and the virality of what they do. Are they referring friends to the business? If you have that, which I recommend people do. And then just think of it as a longer time horizon. And at the end of the day, you're trying to win you're trying to capture visual market share as much as you're trying to capture monetary immediate market share. And that balance it really depends on the brand and then the maturity of the brand and where they are. But what typically ends up winning the day incorrectly is the transactional need to drive $1 at the lowest cost. And that is not always the best decision, but yeah, that's all I can really say on that because this depends.
Yep. There it is. It depends. There's the mantra for today. It is where most marketers will intelligently retreat to, where it is, we need to talk about and think. Let's think before we do, right? And that's the, yeah. Great. Well, let's sort of wind up the conversation, see if it can be helpful for the audience that's listening here we'll talk about holiday experience and holiday customer experience, but let's treat it holistically too, because I think it does translate to year round or to a seasonal focus, whether let's say it's Easter, let's say it's back to school. There's all of these touch points throughout the year that are quote unquote holiday or seasonal focus. What are some of the missteps that you see in doing this seasonal marketing? And it'll apply to now and the upcoming seasonal. And even if we say, hey, this is something to think about when you go to holiday next year, right? And have this in your back pocket to remember. What are some of the things? I got my little hit list, but I'll let you talk first.
Yeah. It's the things that come to mind. I think I've definitely done myself, right? So I'm pointing the blame. As what happens is, and it's happening more acutely because of the macroeconomic situation, is that you're trying to be all to all at the same time in the same way. And you can't, right? You can't just flash these promotions. You can't flash these messagings to every single consumer in the same way, because over time they'll drown them out. And so I think the mistake is trying to be too promotional to a wider audience too quickly, show all your promotional hands to say the same type of messaging to everyone as if it's just going to somehow magically in the aggregate work. And my recommendation is to really build those cohorts and then to have really specific messaging, possibly promotional, early, but distinct way. So it's just about a promotion around the product that you have a propensity to buy, not this 30% off everything. And then as you get down the season, you're just messaging more of it, but a deeper discount, 30% off, 50% off, but nothing changes. Everyone's just waiting for the biggest number and they're waiting for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And you're not getting those customers early and you're potentially losing them to other brands. And it's also, it doesn't serve the purposes of your business long-term because you're just training customers that, hey, we don't value our product. And I'll show you, we don't value our product. I'm going to give it away for you from 30, 40, 50% off. It depends on what week, right?
Like the record business, right? It's like, recorded music is worthless now, right? Because it's devalued, right?
Yeah. So I think you really have to take a step back and say, no, we value our product and we value you. And because we value you, we are actually communicating to you in a way that we feel like is really distinct and personal through messaging and timing. And then we're going to give you very specific and personal promotions based on the products we think are most really relevant to you, and be very cautious not to devalue the product in the season. So that's really where I think I'm always trying to be careful, particularly in the holiday season, because there's so much pressure. There's pressure now more than ever because everyone, Black Fridays now begins November week 1, right? Last year was November week 2. The year before that was November week 3, just moving up earlier and earlier. Pretty soon, I'm assuming that, that Halloween will be Black Friday, Halloween next year. And there's going to be no distinction, right? So it's really trying to force the customer who really loves your brand, loves your products, to know that there's reason to wait because and get something that's real personal from you, and to adopt some of the messaging streams because you respect them so much that you're not going to over message them. You're going to really pay attention to frequency, which is another thing that I think is mainly the thing you have to watch and no one does. It's like, what's the right frequency at the right time, and to keep them engaged without like getting them annoyed. And it just goes back to everything we keep saying. There's no golden bullet to this. It really depends on your brand and your customer set, but it's knowing the frequency, knowing not to go too early, too soon, and not just to give away your business constantly unneeded. So, I mean, those are my big watch outs. I think most marketers know that.
It's funny you said a golden bullet. I'd be happy to find a silver bullet. So
bronze would be good. Bronze is fine.
Exactly. The other thing I found was interesting in some things that are top of mind, I think, is the tone being inauthentic in a season. In other words, especially in the holiday season, this concept of creating false urgency, right? Where everything is, the sirens are blaring everywhere, and especially Black Friday, right? And so I think being authentic in tone, especially in the holiday season, is pretty key, right?
It is. And I think, as a marketer, you in the internal organization, you represent the customer, right? And so in my world, I'm dealing with merchants and they're like, Anthony, we've overbought. We want to end the season clean. We don't want to keep holding on this inventory. And I'm like, but we have this customer base as the marketer that I want to respect and honor. And so if I just continue to give these promotions and sell the products, whether or not I think that's the right timing or product for this customer, we lose them in the long run, or maybe even the short run, to be honest. And so it's really understanding that balance of the internal need, the customer need, and when in doubt, lean on the customer. Like, hey, if you're going to make a mistake, be protective of the customer. Don't give it away. They're pretty smart, right? They're going to find you if they love you and they love your products. And you don't have to continue to message this constant drone of promotion or products and the frequency. You take a step back and put yourself in that position. How many messages would apply to you in a similar instance? And what's the data told you about that cohort, and what should you do?
Yeah. And so this brings up the last thought I think we'll finish off with today. It's interesting. You just brought something up, is this concept of the elongation of the holiday season, right? And you made the quip about Black Friday starts on October 15th, right?
31st of Halloween next. Yes.
I was in the large Fox store yesterday, and the Halloween stuff was cleaned out, and they had Christmas and Thanksgiving stuff already stocked on the shelf. So they're ready to go. So, but it's interesting. Elongation means both elongation before, but elongation after. So could you just have a quick thought about what are customer experiences after the holiday seasons and things that a marketer might be thinking about in terms of, not in a bad way, elongating the season, but there's obviously something that is post-event, right? And you're thinking post-event of Santa Claus has come, now what? Like, do you just shut the door, or is there a tail off of customer experience outside of holiday? Are there any thoughts on that?
The way I approach it is that usually most people they're suffered through an enormous amount of messaging in the holiday, and they're basically done with shopping. So I take January and February as not a acute shopping experience. It's really resetting the relationship, saying thank you, which surprisingly really works really well, right? Just thank you messages.
For everyone's going, wiping their brow,
exactly.
Right? You and the customer, right?
Yeah. Try not to then take it as a clearance moment and sell more product to them if you can, or just sell it to those who you've scored to be a higher propensity to shop that, and rebuild the value proposition for the year to come, right? Which is, What's your core reasons to believe in your product? Who's your core demographic? What's the right messaging that would appeal to them through this season that you're in, January and spring, but all the way through the rest of the year? And then what are the channels that you need in order to do it effectively and intimately in a way that isn't, bombastic and overbearing? And so that's really the time to do that.
So how do you balance that? Because January is funny, so you're saying that, okay, you've got your merchants that are putting pressure on probably getting rid of inventory that didn't sell during the holiday season, right? The customer may be looking for deals in January, but you're also bringing up the concept of rebuilding the relationship and getting away from the transactional and rebuilding the relationship. So in terms of customer experience, how do you balance those three things? It seems to they're almost like competing needs, all clamoring for, satisfy me, right?
Yeah, there's no right way to do it. But my approach on inventory is that, particularly in January and February, the customers already knows who they love. Like, what brands you love. And if you're looking for something, you're going to go directly to that brand and you're going to start discovering what clearance opportunities or markdown opportunities exist in that brand. I don't need to overemphasize that to you and let you know that already, right? I need to tell you that our brand is got a value proposition that you subscribe to, right? Whatever that is. I work for a sustainable brand right now, which I'm super proud of. And so maybe we're totally talking about our sustainability of our product and how we're getting plastic bottles out of the ocean. And we're building we're building content series that really captures them. And then when they're coming to the site, because they're interested in that as well, they actually see that we have a clearance section and they may or not buy. But I'm not messaging them, hey, come buy more clearance. That I think is the wrong tactic.
So you think it's really January is a non-commodification period where you really have to be careful to uphold your brand, especially since it's been a very transactional period through holidays, really an opportunity to rebuild brand relationship.
I think that it all depends on what business. I work for business where it's all about clearance, but those brands that typically are all about clearance don't have that brand value proposition to consider to begin with, right?
They probably don't have that relationship either, right?
They don't have that relationship. And so, but you can build that and you should build it over time. And it's just the right balance. I would lean much more into brand building and value proposition building in January and less on transactional.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Anthony, thanks again. This is, I love doing this because I learn something every time I talk with you, and it's just been really illuminating for me. And I hope the audience has gained as much. I learned a lot today. So thanks a lot. And I really appreciate spending time with us today. So it was great having you on our CX education series. And so with that, we'll sign off. Thank you very much. Again, the brand we have is Rothy. So I would encourage people to go ahead to the Rothy's website and app and discover the wonderful shoes. I would be amiss not to hold up the book, right? So go check them out. And thank you very much. And have a great day, everyone. And thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. See you later.
That's it for this episode of CX Education. Thanks for joining us. This show is brought to you by Cinch, the technology company that helps you create mobile experiences your customers love. Did you enjoy the episode? Then make sure to subscribe to CX Education wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or visit cinch.com/podcast to get instant access to all the latest episodes.